Morning world, it's the 30th of July 2019. It's about 9am in the morning UK time. 9:30am, 9:45, something like that. So Mercury retrograde is shortly about to end now, 48 hours. But at the moment we're in a state of fusion. Mercury is standing still. Jupiter is standing still. Saturn's getting ready to stand still, or getting ready to start moving forward. Uranus is getting ready to stand still. Well, Uranus is standing still and moving backwards. A lot of change going on, especially in the next short-term future. The world's in a bit of a mess at the moment. I seem to be saying that a lot these days. I'm looking particularly, just for today, at the horoscope of the new British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Born on the 19th of June 1964 at 2 p.m. in New York, in America. Didn't realise it, well, I knew he was American, but now it's interesting that he's a Gemini with the moon in Scorpio, and his contender for the British Prime Minister, Jeremy Hunt, was a Scorpio with the moon in Gemini. It's also very interesting that both Boris Johnson and Donald Trump are late Geminis, both with big hair and big ambitions. Note the use of the word big. Jupiter's going to be hitting both of them big time in the near future. Boris Johnson was born with the Sun and Venus conjunct at 28 degrees of Gemini, conjunct the North Node, so born just before a total eclipse of the moon. He was born with the Sun and Venus opposite the asteroid Ceres. We read a lot about Boris Johnson's brother, also in politics. His sister, a bit of a liberal and not a bit more to the left than he is. We read a lot about Boris Johnson's father, Stanley. We read very little indeed about Boris Johnson's mother. Very little. And yet, with the Sun-Venus conjunction opposite his Ceres, there is obviously a great deal of issues there around nurturing. Note the number of the wives he has had, the number of children he has fathered, and the number of marriages that have collapsed underneath him. This is a guy who's obviously looking to be nurtured, supported, almost mothered in a way. And yet, at the same time, to be fair, this combination does give the desire to nurture others, whether it be through hugs, cuddles, food, money, or whether it be through more objective forms of nurturing, such as running a country. Boris Johnson was also born with Mercury in Gemini, strongly squaring Chiron in the 6th house. Mercury in the 9th, squaring Chiron in the 6th. And this is where his tendency to run away with the mouth gets on top of him. With Mercury in Gemini, it does give him a very astute, sharp, focused, clinical and rational mind and good communication skills. But with the square to Chiron, there's the capacity here for self-sabotage, shooting himself in the foot, trying to make things bigger than they actually are. His intellect is already good enough. He doesn't need to impress the world with his superior intellect. I'm talking about Johnson, not Trump. And it seems that he's always kind of trying to big himself up to be bigger and better than he actually is. And if he were a client of mine, which he's not, I'd be saying to him, well, look, you're already pretty good. You don't need to big it up any bigger than it already is. But with that Mercury square Chiron, there's always going to be the capacity for self-sabotage through over-exaggeration. And then he was born with Mars in Gemini, square Saturn in Pisces, square Uranus in Virgo, T-square. There's a lot of... It's not a lot, but a fair amount of unexpressed anger, which can come out again in some of his more radical statements over the years, where he has in the past organised journalists to be beaten up. He has in the past made extremely rude comments about a large number of foreign countries, foreign politicians, people of different gender and different sexual orientation. He's not exactly a politically correct person. However, it's not all challenging. He's got a beautiful grand trine between the moon in Scorpio, the sun and Venus at the end of Gemini, and Saturn in early Pisces. So there is a degree of emotional depth to him. It's just that I don't think it's been really tapped properly yet. There's also, desperately trying to find, Jupiter sextile amid heaven. Yeah. He does shine like the sun at midday. He comes across as being exuberant, optimistic, bouncy, positive. You know, on the surface, his glass is half full, more than half full. Problem is that with all those planets in his ninth house, his tendency for larger than life pronouncements and biting off more than he can chew. With Mercury squaring his Chiron, the ability to sabotage himself by overreaching and overstretching. And with the moon in Scorpio, it's a lovely moon, make no mistake. But I don't think this is a guy who's comfortable with expressing his feelings and emotions. Certainly not in public, and probably not in private either. Which is why I suggested he's got a reputation as being a bit of a philanderer. I mean, his current girlfriend, and this is the Prime Minister of England we're talking about, is in her very early 30s. And that's no disrespect to her. She's obviously a highly intelligent woman. But he is kind of nearly twice her age. He's 55. Yeah, this is a guy who's never worked out yet how to give and take nurturing in an equal way so that he feels valued by others but also feels that he's giving value and that he values himself. The idea of nurturing himself as much as nurturing others and being nurtured by others, I think, is at the root of his issues. Now, with timings, the fact that he's come to power at the time when Jupiter's in his opposite sign, to me, is hugely significant. In terms of transits, the major transits in his chart don't seem to be that active. As in, there's no major transits going on from Pluto, for example. Or, for that matter, from Neptune. The progressed sun in his chart is relatively quiet, as is the progressed moon. So we're not looking at the big stuff here. What we are looking at, though, is the near future. Next year, Neptune will square his Mercury for a year or more, and we will see the first signs of this as we get into late September of this year. And that is going to muddle his thinking and his communication. So, this is a guy who doesn't have a long political lifespan in his current job. And I will stand by that statement. Saturn in the sky is not impacting on his chart in any challenging shape or form at the moment, and neither will it be over the coming year. Even Uranus is not doing him any big disservice. In many ways, with Uranus sextiling his Saturn this year, he is kind of revolutionising his limitations and transforming a lot of his boundaries to become more successful. Whether this becomes permanent or not, we shall see. But the crunch point here is going to be when Jupiter in the sky moves into late Gemini shortly and opposes his sun. Now, this will happen at the end of October, start of November, just as Britain leaves the European Union. So I suspect that as we get into the end of October, Boris Johnson is going to become, you're going to see steam coming out of his ears. He's going to be going really fast, and he's probably going to be getting ever more larger than life, and I suspect he may implode. Trump's chart is similar. I mean, Jupiter is about to oppose Trump's sun for the third and final time, and then conjunct his moon in the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. But that's nothing compared to what's coming up for him next year. Next year, Trump's got to deal with a lot of Saturn and Pluto oppositions, and there's some big stuff coming up for him. But Johnson doesn't seem to be having that. I think Johnson seems to be either a flash in the pan who will crash and burn spectacularly amid recriminations and blame, and then go off and count his pennies or his pounds or his millions in a private little bolt hole. And if that is going to happen, that will happen before the end of the year. Or if he's still as Prime Minister in a disenfranchised so-called United Kingdom next year, then he's going to be seen very much as a lame duck Prime Minister. I honestly don't believe the guy has the fibre and the confidence and strength to lead the country in a way that he wants to, or that he's trying to project himself as being able to. He is no Churchill, not even a Thatcher. Watch this space. And Mercury goes direct in a couple of days' time, and then the first 2 weeks of August are going to see a lot of scores settled. And then from mid-August onwards, we should start seeing resolutions and things becoming a lot clearer. And I, for one, can't wait. Catch you later, world. Bye.